It is during the New Kingdom that Egypt experiences a religious and cultural revolution. In this slide here, I have a lot of text. Now, you know me, I don't put up text unless it's important. So let's read it. During the mid 14th century BCE, so the mid 1300s, Egypt experienced a religious and cultural revolution. What happened? Well, I've outlined it. Pharaoh Amenhotep IV abandoned Egyptian polytheistic religion for a completely new monotheistic religion. This new faith was an abandonment of all the other gods. So we haven't seen all of them, but they include Hathor, Horus, Amun-Re, and instead the pharaoh announces that everybody will abandon worship of all the gods in favor of one god, a sun disk god named Aten. I'll give you some more text. Aten. Aten is a god of the sun. Now, as I said, the sun had many different forms, different behaviors. The figure of Aten, up until recently, had been a very, not minor, but very not misaligned or misinformed, just overlooked. That's the word. Aten had been a fairly overlooked god of the sun. He is represented not by a human or any kind of gender. So I say he, but I don't even want to say that. I'll say it. Aten, they. They are not human, but a disk. They have no gender. They have no physical manifestation. Instead, Aten is recorded as this image here. Aten is always manifested in the symbol of a circle with these rays of light, or these lines symbolizing rays of light. And Aten, who is a sun disk god, is symbolic of the life-giving properties of the sun, and often will have these hands of the gods, which touch down and then animate all under its light rays. So this is the symbol of Aten. It is not a human. It has no gender. It has no physical human or animal manifestation. It has been a part of the Egyptian pantheon, Egyptian gods and goddesses, but like I said before, it was often overlooked. The sun god who got all the attention was Amun-Re. Now, when the pharaoh abandons the worship of all the other gods in favor of Aten, that means the abandonment of Amun-Re. And his name, his original name, Amenhotep, means Amun is pleased. Well, if he doesn't worship Amun, then he needs to change his name. And he changes it to Akhenaten, the living spirit of Aten. And this is Akhenaten, formerly Pharaoh Amenhotep IV. Now, with this rise of a new faith, a faith dedicated to a singular God, or what we would say a monotheistic faith, we're going to see dramatic changes in art as well. So I underlined here, polytheistic religion. Poly means, you guessed it, Greek. Greek for many. Theist is God. So polytheist means many gods. And Egypt had many gods. Akhenaten abandons the gods for a single, or mono. Mono is Greek for singular. Monotheist. Mono God, one God. That one God is Aten, and he changes his name from Amenhotep to Akhenaten, which translates to the living spirit of Aten. He is the physical manifestation of Aten. With the rise of this new faith, we're going to see a change in art. We also see new prayers dedicated to a singular God. Just because I want to, I'm going to read one to you. This is Pharaoh Akhenaten's hymn or prayer to Aten. This is it. It says, "Thou makest the Nile in the netherworld. Thou bringest it as thou desire to preserve alive the people of Egypt. For thou hast made them for thyself, thou Lord of them all." So you see how Aten is given the credit for all of life, all creation, and that creation is coming out of the Nile. I will say before we continue, along with the spelling of all of those other Egyptian names, you will see oftentimes it's spelled Aten, A-T-E-N, or Aton, A-T-O-N. And again, it's just, we don't know exactly how it was pronounced. Is it Aten, Aton? So it's not wrong. It's just a different preference of spelling. With this change of religion, the capital needs to move. The capital of the empire has always been, oh, well, not always. It was in Memphis. Remember, it had moved down to Thebes to be close to Karnak. Karnak, which is the site of the temple of Amun-Re. But we don't want Amun-Re. Akhenaten has literally closed up all of the temples dedicated to all the other gods. The priests and priestesses who have spent their entire lives dedicated to the worship of those other gods are out of a job. And he moves the capital up halfway between the old capital of Memphis and the new capital of Thebes. And he breaks ground in a brand new site in which he titles it Akhenaten, which means the land of Aten. The modern Arabic word for this archaeological site is Tel El Amarna. So now this new capital, Akhenaten, is now the main temple of Aten, and it is the government center of Egypt and the living space or the living quarters of King Pharaoh Akhenaten. This period of Egyptian time in Egyptian history marks a dramatic change in the way that art is expressed. Like this, our next artwork. This is the colossal figure of Akhenaten, our pharaoh. And to more specifically specify this dramatic change in Egyptian art historians refer to this period as the Amarna period. So let's break it down. It is Egyptian in the New Kingdom, but this period of time that we're now looking at is called the Amarna period. Why is it called the Amarna period? Because the modern site is referred to as Tel El Amarna. So archaeologists working at this very unique site knew it as the space called Amarna and then cataloged the artworks as part of the Amarna period. All right? Okay. Let's look at this statue a little bit closer. This statue, called the colossal figure of Akhenaten, is, well, colossal, meaning gigantic, figure of our pharaoh, the king. Amenhotep IV, now Akhenaten. Now, I wish we were in class together because I always enjoy seeing people's reaction to this structure or this body, this sculpture. What's different about it? We've seen several Egyptian kings and queen. How was this one different? Let me go a little bit closer. He's shirtless. He wears that fine pleated skirt typical of the Egyptian men. He holds two sticks, symbols of authority. He has a ceremonial beard. He wears a Nemes crown with Upper and Lower Egypt. But what's different? he's softer, isn't he? Or like more pliable. He's got a belly, and he's got these exaggerated hips. If we look a little closer at his face, here, this is another colossal figure of Akhenaten. We see these lengthened line of his jaw. We see a hooded eye, this very sharp almond eye. The body is much more feminine, I would say. I've given you bullet points here. Write them down. These are to help you identify artworks of the Amarna period. The Amarna period is identifiable by the use of exaggerated body curves, a long face, fuller lips, and heavy lids. You might think, oh, well, their artists just really were terrible at depicting the human form. No. This is a very conscious choice. He is not misshapen. Instead, what this is a reflection of Aten. You might be asking, I don't get it, Ms. Cortez. What do you mean, a reflection of Aten? Aten, the sun disk god, has no gender. Aten, the sun disk god, has no physical manifestation. Akhenaten has said he is the living embodiment of Aten. So we see him in this ambiguous, androgynous body. And then the exaggerations of his curves, the length of his face, the suppleness of his lips and his skin are all there to exaggerate the fact that this is a god here on earth. So it's intentional. When archaeologists first found this site and they found these misshapen forms, here, this is another one, they freaked out, they panicked. They were like, this is not Egyptian. We are used to Egyptian. Egyptian is Menkaure. Egyptian is Khafre. This has way too many weird things going on. Breasts, a long exaggerated face. So archaeologists for many years thought that this was some kind of deformed pharaoh, or some kind of a political act to almost not satirize, but characterize, make him into an exaggerated caricature of himself as a way of like political revolt. No. After time, more scholarship into Tel El Amarna has shown that this is a very conscious effort to reflect a new monotheistic faith. Why would you want all of your imagery to look like the past? You just started a new faith. You are Aten embodied. You don't want to look like Menkaure. You don't want to look like Khafre. So, physically, he hasn't changed, but his political and religious image has to change, has to adapt, has to embody Aten. When I say a colossal figure of Akhenaten, we found many of them. Here, these are not the Akhenatens, but just to give you a sense of scale, many of the Egyptian pharaohs would erect statues of themselves that would be colossals, right? Gigantic, to give you a sense of size. There's a dude standing on a lap. These are not Akhenaten, but this is typical of marking a gateway into a royal city. You would have these colossus. And there were many colossi of Akhenaten that were placed at the entrance gates to the city of Amarna, or Akhenaten. Here. Because some of you might be thinking, oh, well, kings and queens intermarry, and that's a lot of inbreeding. It is. And we'll look at the effects of inbreeding. But that's not what we're seeing here. This is not the effects of inbreeding that's caused this exaggerated shape, this stylized form. And to help you or reassure you that it's not an exaggerated or deformed figure, this is also this one here. This is also Akhenaten when he was Amenhotep the fourth. Well, actually, he was a prince. And it is a portrait of him when his dad was in charge. And we see a normal looking guy. Right? It's kind of cute. So this change, this exaggeration, is a stylized expression of the new faith. Here. To transition us into our next artwork, I want to introduce you to he was a prince at this time. This was his princess. When he becomes king, she becomes queen. Queen Nefertiti. And even in this very rough statue here, we can see she's gorgeous. So let's look at Queen Nefertiti.